She sounds nice. The words were barely louder than the string quartet playing beyond the ballroom doors, but Evelyn Carter heard them as if the entire mansion had gone silent. She froze halfway across the marble floor. For 14 months, her 10-year-old daughter Sophie had barely spoken to anyone outside a handful of doctors. Therapists had tried games. Tutors had tried patience. Specialists had tried schedules, rewards, gentle questions, even carefully designed sensory rooms. Sophie answered with shrugs, notes, or silence. Yet now, beneath a linen-covered table at Evelyn's own charity gala, the little girl had whispered for clear words. And she had whispered them because of Jack Miller, the maintenance man. Evelyn turned sharply. Jack was sitting on the floor about 6 feet from Sophie, back against the wall, still wearing his dark work pants and faded navy shirt. He was not looking under the table. He was not reaching for her. He was simply holding his phone near his ear while a young girl's cheerful voice came through the speaker. "Dad, remember to bring milk home." Jack smiled faintly. "I remember. You forgot last time. That is why I wrote it on my hand. You write everything on your hand. It is cheaper than an assistant." The girl laughed. Sophie listened. Then came the whisper. "She sounds nice." Jack did not react like he had witnessed a miracle. That was the first thing Evelyn noticed. He did not call anyone. He did not turn toward Sophie. He did not say, "You spoke." He only answered softly, "She is." Evelyn crossed the room. "What are you doing?" Jack looked up. "Sitting. With my daughter under a table?" "Near your daughter." Her expression hardened. "You were told not to interfere with the guests." A few staff members nearby glanced over. Jack stood slowly, careful not to move toward Sophie. "I am not interfering." "Then why is she talking to you?" The question came out sharper than Evelyn intended. Jack's eyes stayed calm. "She is not talking to me. I heard her." "So did I. And you think that is normal?" Jack looked toward the tablecloth, where Sophie's small shoes were visible in the shadows. "I think she heard something she wanted to respond to." Evelyn folded her arms. "You are a maintenance contractor, Mr. Miller. You are not a therapist." A catering supervisor lowered his eyes. Someone near the doorway pretended not to listen. Jack did not defend himself. No anger. No wounded pride. Just that same unsettling quiet. "No, ma'am," he said. "I am not." Evelyn expected him to leave. Instead, Sophie's hand appeared beneath the tablecloth and caught the edge of Jack's work glove resting on the floor. Everyone stopped breathing. Evelyn stared. Sophie had refused to hold her own mother's hand in crowded rooms for months. Jack looked down at the small fingers gripping the glove. His face changed, but only slightly. Something protective moved behind his eyes. Not surprise. Recognition. "Do not pull her out," he said quietly. Evelyn stiffened. "Do not tell me what to do with my daughter." Jack met her gaze. "Then do not turn this into a test she has to pass." The words landed cleanly. Evelyn's face went cold. "You have no idea what she has been through." Jack's eyes shifted to Sophie, then back to her. "No, but I know what fear looks like when everyone keeps asking it to perform." The ballroom noise seemed suddenly very far away. Evelyn studied the man in front of her. The worn shirt, the rough hands, the stillness that did not belong to someone easily intimidated. "Who exactly are you?" she asked. Jack picked up his phone. "A single dad who needs to buy milk." Then Sophie tightened her grip on his glove, and Jack did something none of Evelyn's specialists had managed in over a year. He said nothing at all. For the next several minutes, nobody moved. Sophie remained beneath the table, her fingers still curled around the edge of Jack's glove, while the charity gala continued beyond the ballroom doors, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Evelyn could hear the soft rhythm of violins, the clink of silverware, the polite laughter of donors who had no idea her daughter had just spoken more clearly to a stranger than she had to most adults in over a year. Jack lowered himself back to the floor without pulling his glove away. "Sophie," Evelyn said gently. No response. "Sweetheart, it is okay." Sophie's hand tightened. Evelyn stopped. Jack looked at her. "Give her a minute. I know my daughter." "I did not say you did not." "Then stop acting like you understand her better than I do." Jack's face stayed calm. "I do not." Evelyn folded her arms. "You seem very comfortable giving advice." "I am giving space." "Same thing." "Not really." The answer irritated her because he said it without challenge. No edge. No superiority. Just certainty. Evelyn looked toward the table. "Sophie, we can go upstairs." "Nothing. Your room is quiet." Still nothing. Jack glanced at the phone in his hand. My daughter does that too. Sophie's fingers shifted slightly. Evelyn noticed. Does what? Jack kept his voice low. Gets quiet when too many people decide what she needs before asking. Evelyn stared at him. Your daughter does not have Sophie's condition. No. Then do not compare them. Jack nodded. Fair. That stopped Evelyn for a moment. Most people around her defended themselves. Jack simply accepted the boundary. He looked toward the tablecloth. My daughter's name is Lucy. She is 12. She hates crowds, loves pancakes, and thinks every dog in Chicago needs rescuing. A small movement came from beneath the table. Jack continued. She also steals my hoodies. Sophie whispered, all of them. Jack smiled. Every single one. Evelyn's breath caught. This time Sophie had spoken directly to him. Jack still did not celebrate it. Even the ugly ones, he said. Especially the ugly ones. Another silence. Then Sophie slowly lifted the tablecloth just enough to see his face. Her blue eyes appeared first, cautious and wide. Jack did not lean closer. He let her decide the distance. Evelyn had watched specialists spend months trying to create connection through technique. Jack was doing almost nothing. And somehow, that was working. Why are you not asking me questions? Sophie whispered. Jack looked at her. Because you did not ask me to. Sophie thought about that. Everyone asks questions. People get nervous around silence. Are you nervous? Sometimes. Now. Jack shook his head. No, why? He looked toward the ballroom doors. Because quiet is not always empty. Evelyn felt something tighten in her chest. Sophie lowered the tablecloth again, but she did not let go of the glove. A member of the event staff approached carefully. Miss Carter, the donors are asking for you. Evelyn turned. Tell them I will be delayed. The staff member nodded and left. Jack looked up at her. You do not have to stay. Evelyn gave him a cold look. She is my daughter. Exactly. That answer landed differently. Not accusation. Reminder. Evelyn crouched several feet away, careful not to enter Sophie's space. For the first time that evening, she stopped trying to fix anything. The three of them sat there in silence. After a while, Sophie whispered, Lucy really likes dogs. Jack nodded. More than people sometimes. That makes sense. Evelyn almost laughed, but caught herself. Sophie's hand appeared again, this time holding a folded napkin. She pushed it toward Jack. He opened it. On it, in small handwriting, were 4 words. Do you come back tomorrow? Jack read them once. His expression changed. Evelyn saw it immediately. Not pride. Something heavier. Something that looked like responsibility. If your mom wants me here, he said. Sophie turned her eyes toward Evelyn. For the first time in months, the decision was being offered to her instead of made for her. Evelyn looked at Jack, then at her daughter. He can come back. Sophie nodded once. Jack folded the napkin and handed it back. Then, as he stood, his sleeve pulled slightly above his wrist. Evelyn caught a glimpse of an old military tattoo, faded but unmistakable. Jack noticed her looking and lowered his sleeve. What unit? She asked. His eyes hardened for the first time. That was another life. Military. Jack picked up his tool bag. Good night, Miss Carter. He walked away before she could stop him. Evelyn remained beside the table, staring after the quiet maintenance contractor her daughter had somehow chosen to trust. And for the first time, she wondered whether the strangest thing about Jack Miller was not why Sophie had spoken to him. It was why a man with military discipline in his posture was working inside her home pretending to be ordinary. Jack returned the next morning at 8:15, carrying a toolbox in one hand and a paper bag in the other. The Carter mansion was quieter than the night before. No donors. No string quartet. No polished laughter echoing beneath the chandeliers. Just morning light across the hardwood floors and the faint smell of coffee from the kitchen. Evelyn was already waiting. You came back. Jack looked at her. You said I could. For Sophie. I know. Evelyn's eyes dropped to the paper bag. What is that? Blueberry muffins. For her. For me. Jack paused. She can have one if she wants. Evelyn studied him. You planned that answer. No, you are difficult to read. That has been said before. Footsteps sounded at the top of the staircase. Sophie stood there in gray sweatpants and an oversized sweater, one hand resting on the railing. She looked at Jack, then at the bag. Lucy likes blueberry. Jack glanced up. Chocolate chip. Sophie came down one step. Then why blueberry? Because Lucy says chocolate for breakfast is irresponsible. Sophie took another step. Do you agree? Not completely. A tiny smile appeared on her face. Evelyn saw it and forgot to breathe. Jack did not point it out. He simply set the paper bag on the kitchen counter and opened his toolbox. I need to fix the loose cabinet hinge from yesterday. Sophie followed him from several feet away. Evelyn stayed behind. Jack worked slowly, removing the old screw, checking the wood, replacing it with a slightly larger one. Sophie watched every movement. Why did you not just put the same screw back? She asked. Because the hole is worn. So, if something is loose because the foundation changed, using the same solution usually makes it loose again. Evelyn looked at Jack. He kept working as if he had said nothing important. Sophie sat on the floor near the cabinet. Can people be like that? Jack paused. Sometimes. Can they be fixed? Evelyn's face tightened. Jack set down the screwdriver. People are not cabinets. Sophie looked at him. Then what do? You listen. You give them time. You stop calling them broken. The kitchen became very quiet. Evelyn lowered her eyes. She had used that word once. Not to Sophie. To a specialist, behind a closed door. Broken. She had regretted it immediately, but regret did not erase memory. Sophie picked at the sleeve of her sweater. Mom thinks something is wrong with me. Evelyn stepped forward. Sophie, I do not. Sophie turned away. Jack did not rescue either of them. He only said, maybe your mom is scared. Sophie looked back at him. She is never scared. Jack glanced toward Evelyn. Everybody is scared of something. Evelyn folded her arms. And what are you scared of, Mr. Miller? For the first time, Jack's expression shifted. His gaze moved toward the window. Failing someone who trusts me. Sophie watched him carefully. Did that happen? Jack nodded once. Yes. In the military? Evelyn immediately looked at him. Jack said nothing. Sophie did not push. Instead, she picked up one of the spare screws from the floor and rolled it between her fingers. Lucy trusts you. Jack's face softened. She does. So you did not fail everybody. The words landed with unexpected force. Jack looked at Sophie for several seconds. No, he said quietly. I guess I did not. Evelyn saw something then that bothered her more than the tattoo had. Jack was not simply patient with Sophie. He understood silence because he carried his own. Later that morning, while Sophie sat nearby drawing beside Jack as he repaired a cabinet door, Evelyn went into her study and closed the door. She opened her laptop and typed his full name into a search window. Jack Miller. Chicago. Military. Hundreds of results appeared, most useless. She narrowed the search. Veterans. Navy. Nothing clear. Then one old photograph surfaced from a charity event in Virginia Beach nearly 12 years earlier. 5 men stood beside a retired admiral. One of them was younger, clean-shaven, but unmistakably Jack. Beneath the photograph was a caption that made Evelyn sit straighter. Former Naval Special Warfare personnel attending a family support fundraiser. Her fingers stopped over the keyboard. She searched again. Jack Miller, Navy SEAL. This time, fewer results appeared. One archived article mentioned a Chief Petty Officer Jackson Miller receiving recognition for leadership during overseas service, but the details were vague. Evelyn stared at the name. Chief Petty Officer. She looked through the study glass toward the kitchen. Jack was sitting on the floor with Sophie, showing her how to tighten a hinge without stripping the screw. No medals. No stories. No need to be impressive. Evelyn whispered to herself. What happened to you? At that exact moment, Sophie handed Jack a folded piece of paper. He opened it. There were 3 words written inside. Can Lucy visit? Jack read them, then smiled. I will ask her. Sophie nodded. Evelyn watched from the doorway. For 14 months, experts had tried to make Sophie rejoin the world. Jack had done something different. He had brought the world close enough that she wanted to reach for it herself. Lucy arrived just after 4 that afternoon wearing a red raincoat, faded jeans, and the cautious expression of a 12-year-old who had been told not to make a big deal out of anything. Jack stood beside her at the front door with one hand resting lightly on her shoulder. Evelyn opened it herself. You must be Lucy. Yes, ma'am. Come in. Lucy looked up at Jack. She sounds different in person. Jack closed his eyes for half a second. We are going to talk about filters, not people. Evelyn almost smiled. Sophie was waiting halfway down the hallway. She did not come closer. Lucy noticed immediately and did not wave too enthusiastically or ask why. She simply held up a small paper bag. I brought dog cookies. Sophie blinked. We do not have a dog. Lucy nodded. I know. I forgot that part. Sophie stared at her for 1 second, then laughed. It was small but real. Jack looked away on purpose. Evelyn saw him do it. No celebration. No pressure. Just respect. The girls moved toward the family room, Lucy talking about a stray beagle she wanted to adopt, while Sophie listened from beside the window. Jack stayed near the doorway. Evelyn stood next to him. "You researched me," he said quietly. Her expression changed. "How do you know? You have been looking at me like you were trying to match my face to a photograph." Evelyn folded her arms. "You were Navy." "Yes. Naval Special Warfare." Jack looked toward the girls. "A long time ago. Were you a Navy SEAL?" He was silent for a moment. "Yes." Evelyn exhaled slowly. "Why did you not tell me? You hired a maintenance contractor." "That is not an answer. It is the answer that matters." She studied him. People usually want others to know when they have done something extraordinary. Jack's eyes remained on Sophie. People who need everyone to know usually have not made peace with it yet. Evelyn lowered her voice. "And you have." Jack gave a faint smile. "Some days." A sharp sound came from the family room. A decorative tray had slipped from a side table and hit the hardwood floor. Sophie froze. The smile vanished from her face. Her breathing changed almost instantly. Evelyn moved toward her. "Sophie, sweetheart, you are okay." Sophie backed away. "Do not." Evelyn stopped. Lucy looked at Jack. Jack did not rush forward. He lowered himself several feet away, keeping his hands visible. "Sophie," he said. No response. "Look at the blue lamp." Her eyes flicked toward it. "Good. Now the window." She looked. Now Lucy's red coat. Sophie's breathing was still fast, but less uneven. Jack continued. "3 things you can see. 2 things you can hear." Sophie swallowed. "Rain." "Good." Lucy breathing. Lucy held perfectly still. Jack nodded. "1 thing you can feel." Sophie looked down. "The rug." "Under your feet?" She nodded. "Stay there." Evelyn watched, stunned. Jack had not touched her daughter. He had not commanded her to calm down. He had simply given her something solid to notice. Within a minute, Sophie's shoulders lowered. She looked at Lucy. "Sorry." Lucy shook her head. "You did not do anything." Sophie turned toward Jack. "How did you know?" Jack's face became quieter. "Because sometimes the mind thinks danger is still happening after it is over." Evelyn stared at him. "You learned that in the military?" Jack looked at her. "Some of it." Sophie asked, "Did that happen to you?" Jack was silent. Then he nodded. "Yes." "Were you scared?" "Very." Evelyn watched him admit it without shame. Not as weakness, as truth. Sophie stepped closer. "But you are not scared now." Jack looked at Lucy, then at Sophie. "Sometimes I am. I just know what to do with it better." The room settled. Rain ticked softly against the windows. Evelyn had spent 14 months surrounding Sophie with expertise. Jack had brought something else. Permission. Permission to be afraid without being broken. Permission to be quiet without disappearing. Later, when Lucy and Sophie sat together drawing dogs they wanted to adopt someday, Evelyn found Jack in the kitchen pouring coffee. "You could have told me who you were." Jack looked at her. "Would it have changed how you treated me?" Evelyn started to answer, then stopped. Jack nodded. "That is why I did not." She looked toward the family room. "Sophie trusts you. She is starting to trust herself." "That is not the same thing." "It is better." Evelyn leaned against the counter. "I keep thinking I can protect her if I control everything around her." Jack's voice softened. "Control and safety are not always the same. You say that like you learned it the hard way." He looked down at his coffee. "I did." Evelyn studied him. "What happened?" Jack was quiet for several seconds. "I came home from service thinking surviving made me strong enough for everything. And then Lucy's mother died." Evelyn's expression softened. "I am sorry." "Thank you." "Was that when you left?" Jack nodded. "I had a daughter who needed a father more than the world needed whatever I used to be." From the other room, Sophie laughed again. Evelyn turned toward the sound. This time, she did not freeze. She simply listened. Then Sophie appeared in the doorway, holding Lucy's hand. She looked at her mother. "Can Lucy stay for dinner?" Evelyn stared at the 2 girls. Jack said nothing. He did not need to. Evelyn smiled. "Yes." Sophie nodded. Then, after the smallest hesitation, she walked across the room and slipped her free hand into her mother's. Evelyn went completely still. Sophie looked up. "Mom." Evelyn blinked back tears. "I am here." Jack lowered his eyes, giving them the privacy of the moment. And for the first time in a very long while, Evelyn understood that healing had not entered her home through wealth, expertise, or control. It had entered quietly, wearing work boots. The next morning, the mansion felt different. Not transformed, not healed, just less afraid of its own silence. Sophie came downstairs before Evelyn, wearing the same oversized sweater and carrying a sketchbook under one arm. Jack was already in the breakfast room, replacing a loose latch on one of the tall windows. Lucy sat at the island eating toast and drawing a dog with ears far too large for its head. "That does not look like a beagle," Sophie said. Lucy looked offended. "It is artistic. It has horse ears." "Exactly. Artistic." Jack glanced over his shoulder. "I'm staying out of this." Sophie smiled and sat beside Lucy. Evelyn stopped in the doorway. She watched for several seconds before either girl noticed her. Sophie did not retreat. She did not lower her eyes. She simply pushed the jam toward her mother. "Do you want some?" Evelyn's throat tightened. "Yes, thank you." It was such a small sentence. In another family, it might have passed unnoticed. Here, it felt like sunlight entering through a crack. Jack returned to the window latch. Evelyn crossed the room and stood near him. "You were right." Jack kept working. "That is dangerous information to give me." "About control." He looked at her then. "That part one would rather be wrong about." Evelyn folded her arms. "I have spent more money trying to make Sophie feel safe than most people spend on a house. Money can buy quiet rooms. But not trust." "No." She watched him tighten the final screw. "What does?" Jack tested the latch. "Consistency. That's simple." "Not simple. Repetitive." Evelyn almost smiled. "You make healing sound like maintenance." "Sometimes it is." She looked toward Sophie. "Show up. Do what you said. Do not disappear." Jack's expression shifted slightly. "That helps." Evelyn heard something beneath the answer. "You are talking about Lucy now." Jack put the screwdriver back into his toolbox. "I'm talking about both of us. You said her mother died." He nodded. "Emily. How old was Lucy?" 8. "And you?" Jack looked toward the window. Morning light reflected across the glass. "Old enough to think I should know how to handle it." Evelyn waited. He continued. "I had spent years in places where people expected calm from me. Decisions. Timing. Control. Then I came home, and none of that helped when my daughter cried at 2 in the morning because she missed her mother." Evelyn's voice softened. "What did you do?" "At first, tried to solve it." "Of course you did." Jack gave a faint smile. "She hated that." "Smart girl." "Eventually, I learned to sit on the floor outside her bedroom." "And say what?" "Nothing." Evelyn looked at Sophie. "That is why you knew what to do at the gala." "Partly." "And the rest?" Jack's eyes became distant. "Training teaches you that panic gets louder when everyone around it becomes louder too." He paused. "Life taught me the same thing in a different way." Before Evelyn could answer, Sophie appeared beside them holding her sketchbook. "Can I show Jack something?" Evelyn looked at her daughter. "You do not need my permission to show him." Sophie hesitated, then opened the book. On the page was a drawing of 4 people beneath a crooked tree. Sophie, Lucy, Jack, Evelyn. No one stood apart. Jack studied it carefully. "That tree has structural problems." Sophie frowned. "It is a tree." Still concerned, Lucy shouted from the island. "Do not listen to him. He fixes everything." Sophie looked at Jack. "Not everything." The room quieted. Jack met her eyes. "No," Sophie tapped the drawing. "But some things." "Some things." She nodded, satisfied. Then her expression changed. "Mom." Evelyn stepped closer. "Yes." Sophie looked down at the page. "I think I want to go back to school." Evelyn froze. Jack did not. Lucy stopped drawing. "Not every day," Sophie added quickly. "Maybe 2 days. Maybe 1. Evelyn opened her mouth, then closed it. Jack watched her carefully. She understood the warning without him saying a word. Do not turn courage into a contract. Evelyn knelt beside Sophie. "1 day is enough." Sophie looked up. "And if I cannot stay, then I come get you. You will not be mad." Evelyn shook her head. "No." Sophie studied her mother's face for a long moment. "Okay." Then she leaned forward and hugged her. Evelyn held still at first, almost afraid movement would break the moment. Then her arms closed gently around her daughter. Jack turned toward the window, giving them privacy. Lucy pretended to be deeply interested in her toast. A few minutes later, Evelyn followed Jack into the hallway. "You knew she was getting ready to ask." "No, you looked like you did." "I hoped." Evelyn looked back toward the breakfast room. "She has not asked about school in a year." "Then do not make today bigger than she can carry." Evelyn nodded slowly. "You really do this on purpose, do you not?" "Do what?" Say the thing I need to hear, and then act like you were talking about window latches. Jack lifted his toolbox. Window latches are less complicated. Evelyn smiled. Jack. He stopped. Thank you. His expression softened. She did the hard part. You made room for it. Jack looked toward Sophie. So did you. Evelyn stood there after he walked away, thinking about that. For months, she had believed healing would come when the right person finally reached her daughter. She was beginning to understand the harder truth. Sophie had always been reachable. The adults around her had simply been too busy pulling to notice she was already trying to move. The first school day was harder than Sophie had imagined. At 8:30 that morning, the Carter car stopped beneath a row of maple trees outside Lakeview Academy, where students hurried through the front doors carrying backpacks, lunchboxes, and conversations that seemed far too loud. Sophie sat in the back seat with both hands wrapped around the straps of her backpack. Evelyn waited beside her. Jack stood outside on the sidewalk with Lucy, who had insisted on coming early before her own school day began. You do not have to stay, Evelyn said softly. Sophie stared at the entrance. I know. We can go home. I know. You can try another day. Sophie looked at her mother. Mom. Evelyn stopped. Too many choices? Sophie nodded. Jack leaned slightly toward the open car door, but stayed several feet away. You only need one decision, he said. Sophie looked at him. What? Do you want to put one foot on the sidewalk? She looked down. That is all. That is all. Sophie placed one shoe outside the car. Good, Jack said. Now what? You decide. She sat there for several seconds, then placed the second foot down. Lucy smiled, but said nothing. Evelyn understood and kept quiet too. Sophie stood. The morning air was cool, carrying the smell of wet leaves and fresh coffee from a shop across the street. A school bell rang somewhere inside. Sophie flinched. Jack noticed. Blue car, he said. Sophie looked toward the curb. Red backpack. She found one on a passing student. Flagpole. Sophie looked up. Her breathing slowed. Evelyn watched with a mixture of gratitude and pain. She had once believed protecting Sophie meant removing every difficult thing. Jack was teaching her something different. Safety could also mean knowing how to remain when difficulty arrived. Sophie took 5 steps toward the entrance, then stopped. I cannot. Evelyn moved instinctively. Jack lifted one hand gently, not stopping her, only reminding her. Give her space. Evelyn stayed where she was. Sophie turned around. I said I cannot. Jack nodded. Then do not. Sophie frowned. You are not disappointed? No, but I only got this far. Jack looked at the distance between the car and the school doors. Yesterday, this sidewalk was impossible. Sophie looked down at her shoes. Today it is not. Lucy added, that seems like progress. Sophie gave her a small smile. Evelyn stepped closer, but slowly. Would you like me to walk with you to the office? Sophie considered it. Just the office. Just the office. They walked together. Jack and Lucy stayed outside. 20 minutes later, Evelyn returned alone. Jack looked at her face. She stayed. Evelyn nodded, almost afraid to say it aloud. For one class. Jack smiled. That is enough. I want to call every 10 minutes. Do not. I knew you were going to say that. Then we are making progress too. Evelyn laughed quietly. By noon, Sophie had stayed through 3 classes. At 12:15, she called. Evelyn answered immediately. Mom, I am here. Can you come get me? Evelyn closed her eyes. Months ago, she might have heard failure in that sentence. Today she heard trust. Yes. Are you mad? No, promise. I promise. When they arrived home, Sophie went straight to the kitchen where Jack was repairing a cabinet light. I stayed until lunch, she said. Jack looked over. How was it? Too loud. Anything good? Sophie thought. My teacher remembered my favorite book. That sounds good. A boy asked why I never talked last year. Jack's expression softened. What did you say? Sophie shrugged. I said I did not want to. Jack nodded. Fair answer. Mom did not make me stay. He glanced at Evelyn. Also good. Sophie walked closer. I thought she would. Evelyn's eyes lowered. Jack did not rescue her from the truth. He only said, people can learn. Sophie looked at her mother. Even moms. Evelyn smiled through the ache in her chest. Especially moms. Sophie nodded, then disappeared upstairs to change clothes. Evelyn remained in the kitchen. I almost made her stay, she admitted. Jack looked back at the light fixture. But you did not. I wanted to. Wanting control and choosing trust are different things. Evelyn exhaled. You make everything sound like a lesson. I am literally changing a light bulb. She smiled. Then her expression became serious. Jack, I spoke to the retired admiral in that photograph. His hand stopped. The screwdriver remained still between his fingers. Why? Because I wanted to understand you. That is not the same as asking me. Evelyn lowered her eyes. I know. Jack slowly stepped down from the stool. The warmth left his face, replaced by the guarded quiet she had first seen at the gala. What did he tell you? Not much. Good. He said you were one of the calmest men he ever served with. Jack looked away. He said people trusted you when things became uncertain. Evelyn. And he said you left because Lucy needed you. Jack's jaw tightened. That was mine to tell. The words were not loud, but they carried weight. Evelyn felt the boundary immediately. You are right. Jack looked at her. I trusted you inside my home. And I crossed a line. Yes. She nodded. No excuses. No money. No authority. I am sorry. Silence stretched between them. Then Sophie appeared at the kitchen doorway. She looked from Evelyn to Jack. Are you mad at Mom? Jack answered carefully. I am disappointed. Sophie looked worried. Are you leaving? Jack's expression softened, but he did not lie. Not today. Tomorrow. I do not know yet. Sophie swallowed. Evelyn felt fear rise in her chest, but this time she did not rush to fix it. Sophie walked toward Jack. You said people can learn. Jack looked at her. They can. Even moms. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly. Jack gave the smallest smile. Especially moms. Sophie reached for his hand. He let her take it. The room stayed quiet. No one pretended the mistake had disappeared. No one demanded immediate forgiveness. But something important remained standing between them. Not perfection. Grace. And for the first time, Evelyn understood that trust was not proven by never crossing a boundary. Sometimes it was proven by what happened after you realized you had. The next morning, Jack returned at 8:15. That mattered more than anything he could have said the night before. Sophie was already in the breakfast room when he walked in, sitting beside the window with her sketchbook open and a pencil resting across the page. She looked up immediately. You came back. Jack set down his toolbox. I said I would think about it. That is not the same. No, so why did you? Jack glanced toward Evelyn, who stood near the coffee machine but stayed quiet. Because disappointment does not always mean goodbye. Sophie absorbed that carefully. Evelyn did too. Jack moved toward the loose cabinet light he had left unfinished. Also because this thing still flickers. Sophie smiled. You always ruin serious moments. It keeps them affordable. Evelyn almost laughed. For a few minutes, the room returned to something ordinary. Jack removed the light cover. Sophie drew. Evelyn poured coffee. Then Sophie asked, Are you still mad at Mom? Jack kept his eyes on the fixture. A little. Evelyn's hand paused around the mug. Sophie frowned. But you came back. Both things can be true. You can trust someone and still be disappointed? Jack looked at her. Yes. That sounds complicated. Most honest things are. Sophie glanced at her mother. Mom said sorry. I know. Is that enough? Jack set the screwdriver down. Sorry is a beginning. What matters next is whether people respect the boundary they crossed. Evelyn finally spoke. I will. Jack looked at her. No challenge. No performance. Just a quiet promise. Then we start there. The answer seemed to loosen something in the room. Later that morning, Sophie surprised them both by asking to go outside. Not to school. Not anywhere crowded. Just the back garden. For months, even the idea of leaving the protected interior of the house had made her hesitant. Jack did not praise the decision. He simply opened the door. Cool air moved through the hallway. Sophie stopped at the threshold. What if I want to come back inside? Then you come back inside, Evelyn said before Jack could answer. Sophie looked at her mother. Right away. Right away. Sophie stepped onto the stone patio. One step. Then another. Jack remained behind her. Evelyn stayed several feet away. The garden was quiet except for leaves moving in the wind and the distant sound of traffic beyond the property wall. Sophie walked toward a wooden bench beneath an oak tree. Then a landscaping crew started a leaf blower somewhere near the side gate. The sudden noise shattered the calm. Sophie froze. Her breathing shortened. Evelyn moved instinctively, but stopped herself. Jack lowered his voice. Sophie. No response. Look at the tree. Her eyes moved. What color are the leaves? Green. The bench. Brown. Your shoes. She looked down. White. Good. The noise continued in the distance. Jack did not tell anyone to shut it off. He did not make the world disappear for her. He simply helped her stay inside it. What do you hear besides the machine? Sophie swallowed. Birds. Anything else? She listened. Wind. Good. Her shoulders slowly dropped. Evelyn watched every second. Sophie looked at her mother. You did not make them stop. Evelyn shook her head. I wanted to. Why did you not? Evelyn glanced at Jack, then back at Sophie. Because I thought maybe you wanted the chance to decide what you could handle. Sophie stared at her for a long moment. I did. Evelyn's eyes filled. I am learning. Sophie walked toward her. Not quickly, not dramatically. She simply stood close enough that their shoulders touched. Jack looked away, giving them privacy. After a while, Sophie said, Can we stay out here? Evelyn smiled. As long as you want. Jack sat on the far end of the bench. Silence returned, but it was different now. Softer. Chosen. Sophie opened her sketchbook and began drawing the oak tree. Evelyn sat beside her. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Eventually Sophie looked toward Jack. Were you scared when you came home from the Navy? Jack's expression changed. Yes. More than during missions? He was quiet for a moment. Different. How? Jack looked at the garden. In service, you train for uncertainty. At home, I thought love would make everything easier. Sophie waited. It did not. Love made everything matter more. Evelyn lowered her eyes. Jack continued. When Lucy's mother died, I could not solve grief. I could only stay. Sophie looked at him. Maybe staying is the solving. Jack smiled faintly. Maybe. Then Sophie turned to her mother and said something Evelyn had waited over a year to hear. Mom, you can sit closer. Evelyn froze. Are you sure? Sophie nodded. Evelyn moved slowly until their arms touched. Sophie leaned against her. Jack looked down at his hands. No one spoke. Nothing needed explaining. The woman who had once believed safety came from control was learning to become safe by listening. The girl who had spent months retreating into silence was beginning to choose connection. And the man who had built his second life around staying out of other people's way was discovering that sometimes grace does not ask you to disappear. Sometimes it asks you to remain. The following afternoon, Sophie asked for something no one expected. Can we go somewhere crowded? Evelyn looked up from the kitchen table. Jack stopped halfway through closing his toolbox. Lucy, who was sitting beside Sophie with a stack of colored pencils, blinked twice. Crowded how? Evelyn asked. Sophie looked down at her sketchbook. Not very crowded. Jack leaned against the counter. That narrows it down. Sophie almost smiled. Maybe the library. Evelyn's first instinct was immediate. Private entrance. Security. Quiet room reserved in advance. A controlled route. She felt the entire plan form inside her before she said a word. Then she remembered the garden. She remembered school. She remembered that safety was not the same as removing every unknown. We can try the library, she said. Sophie looked at Jack. Will you come? Jack hesitated. If your mom is okay with it. Evelyn met his eyes. I am. An hour later, they stood outside a neighborhood library 3 miles from the mansion. No private access. No staff waiting. Just families, students, and the ordinary rhythm of a weekday afternoon. Sophie stopped at the entrance. Jack noticed her hands tightening around the straps of her backpack. What is the plan? He asked. Sophie took a breath. 5 minutes. Good plan. And if I want to leave? Evelyn answered first. We leave. Sophie nodded. They stepped inside. The air smelled like paper, carpet, and old wood. Somewhere near the children's section, a printer hummed. A toddler laughed. A cart rolled softly across the floor. Sophie stayed close to Evelyn but did not hold her hand. Lucy walked on the other side, talking quietly about a dog training book she wanted to find. Jack remained a few feet behind them. No one directed Sophie. No one praised every step. 5 minutes became 10. 10 became 20. Sophie found a book about marine animals and sat near a window. Evelyn watched from across the table. Jack sat nearby with a paperback he had clearly chosen only because waiting looked less obvious when you were reading. You are not reading that, Evelyn whispered. Jack looked at the page. I am on the same paragraph for the 4th time. Why? Because someone keeps checking whether I am checking on her. Evelyn followed his eyes to Sophie. I am trying not to. You are getting better. That sounded almost kind. Do not get used to it. Evelyn smiled. Then the fire alarm sounded. The sudden electronic tone cut through the building. Lights flashed near the ceiling. Chairs moved. People stood. The librarian called for everyone to exit calmly. Sophie froze. The book slipped from her hands. Evelyn rose immediately. Sophie. Her daughter's breathing shortened. Lucy moved closer but stopped when Jack lifted one hand. Too many voices, Sophie whispered. Jack lowered himself to her eye level without touching her. You know what to do. She shook her head. I cannot. You already have. Not here. Here is just another place. The alarm continued. People moved past them toward the exit. Jack's voice stayed steady. Find one thing that is not moving. Sophie's eyes searched. The pillar. Good. One sound besides the alarm. She swallowed. Your voice. Jack nodded. One person you trust. Sophie looked at him. For half a second, Evelyn felt something painful. Then Sophie turned her head toward her mother. Mom. Evelyn froze. I am here. Sophie reached out. Not toward Jack. Toward Evelyn. Their hands met. Jack stood. Now we walk. Sophie held her mother's hand all the way outside. Once they reached the sidewalk, the alarm stopped. It had been a false trigger from a maintenance sensor. No emergency. No danger. Just noise. Sophie took a long breath. Evelyn looked down at their joined hands as if they were something sacred. You chose me, she whispered. Sophie frowned slightly. You are my mom. Evelyn laughed through tears. Jack looked away. Lucy pretended to study a poster in the window. After a moment, Sophie turned toward Jack. You did not help me. Jack raised an eyebrow. I thought I did okay. No. You made Mom help me. Jack glanced at Evelyn. She did not need much help. Sophie looked between them. You trust her now? The question caught both adults off guard. Jack answered carefully. More than before. Evelyn did not hide from it. And I trust him enough to let that answer be honest. Sophie nodded, satisfied. They began walking toward the car. Halfway there, a black sedan pulled to the curb. An older man stepped out, silver-haired, straight-backed, wearing a navy blazer despite the warm afternoon. Jack stopped instantly. Evelyn noticed the change. The calm remained, but something older entered his posture. The man looked at him for several seconds. Chief Miller. Sophie turned toward Jack. Lucy went quiet. Evelyn recognized the retired admiral from the photograph. Jack's jaw tightened. Admiral Hayes. The older man smiled faintly. You still make people work hard to find you. Jack looked at Evelyn. She shook her head immediately. Not me. Hayes nodded. Heard from a mutual friend that you were in Chicago. Jack exhaled. I am not coming back. I did not ask you to. The admiral looked toward Lucy, then Sophie and Evelyn. Looks like you finally found somewhere worth staying. Jack said nothing. Hayes extended his hand. Just wanted to see that for myself. Jack looked at the hand, then took it. No salute. No ceremony. Just two men acknowledging a past neither needed to explain. Sophie watched closely. Were you his boss? Hayes smiled. Sometimes. Was he good? Jack gave him a warning look. Hayes ignored it. He was the man people trusted when the room got scared. Sophie looked at Jack, then at Evelyn. That sounds familiar. Nobody laughed immediately. Then Evelyn did. Jack shook his head. The admiral walked back toward his car, leaving them in the afternoon sunlight. Sophie slipped her hand into Evelyn's again. Mom. Yes. Jack was important. Evelyn looked at him. He still is. Jack glanced toward Lucy. Different job now. Sophie nodded. Better job. Jack looked at the two girls, then at Evelyn. His expression softened. Much better. 3 months later, Sophie stood at the edge of the same ballroom where everything had begun. The chandeliers were still bright. The tables were still covered in white linen. Donors still moved through the room, carrying polite smiles and expensive glasses. But Sophie was different. She wore a simple navy dress and held Evelyn's hand without being asked. Jack stood near the back with Lucy, no tool bag this time. Just a dark jacket and the same quiet posture that made crowded rooms seem smaller. You do not have to speak, Evelyn whispered. Sophie looked up at her. I know. You can leave any time. I know. And I will not be disappointed. Sophie squeezed her hand. I know that too. Evelyn smiled. And this time there was no fear hiding behind it. The event was a fundraiser for children dealing with anxiety, grief, and social withdrawal. Months earlier, Evelyn would have hired professionals to speak about resilience. Tonight, she had done something harder. She had asked Sophie whether she wanted to say anything herself. Sophie had said maybe. That was enough. When the host introduced Evelyn, she walked to the microphone alone. A few months ago, I thought helping my daughter meant finding the right expert, the right program, the right environment. Her voice was steady. I was wrong about one important thing. The room quieted. Sophie watched from the side. Jack did too. I kept trying to make her feel safe by controlling everything around her. But safety is not silence. It is not perfection. It is not removing every difficult sound, person, or moment. Evelyn looked towards Sophie. Sometimes safety is knowing someone will stay when things become difficult. Jack lowered his eyes. Lucy nudged him lightly. That was about you. Partly, he whispered. Evelyn continued. My daughter taught me to listen. A friend taught me to wait. And both taught me that trust cannot be demanded. She stepped away from the microphone. Applause began, but Sophie did not move. Then she looked at Jack. Do you think I should? Jack shook his head. Does not matter what I think. Sophie looked at Evelyn. What about you? Evelyn answered quietly. Same. Sophie took a breath. Then she walked onto the stage. The applause faded. She reached the microphone and stared at the room. For several seconds, nothing happened. No one rushed her. No one filled the silence. Jack watched Evelyn. Evelyn kept both hands at her sides. Sophie finally spoke. I used to think everyone was waiting for me to become normal again. The room went completely still. That made me want to disappear more. Evelyn's eyes filled. Sophie continued. Then someone stopped asking me questions. A few people glanced toward Jack. He looked uncomfortable immediately. Sophie smiled faintly. He was kind of annoying. Lucy covered a laugh. But he listened before he talked. Sophie looked toward her mother. Then Mom learned to do that too. Evelyn pressed her lips together. I am still learning, she whispered. Sophie heard her. Me too. The room stayed silent for one more heartbeat. Then Sophie stepped away from the microphone. This time, when applause came, she did not flinch. She walked straight to Evelyn and took her hand. Later that evening, after the ballroom emptied, the four of them sat on the back terrace with hot chocolate. Lucy was telling Sophie about a dog adoption event the next weekend. Evelyn looked at Jack. I wanted to offer you something. Jack sighed. That sentence usually means trouble. Not a job. Good. A donation to the Veterans Family Program Admiral Hayes mentioned. Jack looked surprised. In Lucy's mother's name, if that is all right. His expression softened. Emily would have liked that. Evelyn nodded. And I wanted to say thank you without turning it into payment. Jack looked towards Sophie and Lucy laughing near the garden steps. Then thank you accepted. Evelyn smiled. That easy. You have improved. Careful. I know. Silence settled between them, comfortable now. Sophie looked back toward the terrace. Mom, come see this. Evelyn stood immediately, then stopped. She looked at Jack. Coming. He glanced toward Lucy. Looks like I am outnumbered. Evelyn held out her hand. Not dramatically. Not as a promise. Just an invitation. Jack looked at it, then at her. He took it. Across the garden, Sophie noticed. She did not say anything. She did not need to. Months earlier, everyone had been waiting for the quiet girl to speak. In the end, she had taught all of them something about silence. Silence was not always fear. Sometimes it was trust before words. Sometimes it was grace after disappointment. Sometimes it was the space where second chances finally had room to begin.